Chugga 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 ch. Choo choo. Kek Filet TCG. Oh hey, didn't see you there. You read the title of this video and you probably know what's coming. It's a mini guide and a promotional video for Black Yellow Luffy. You can already see that this video is well over 30 minutes, and most guides aren't even close to that long, and this is a mini promotional guide. We did leave a lot out in this promotional video. On the Patreon, it's an hour and 45 minutes long on Black Yellow Luffy. I have Enigma, who recently got third in a Singapore GAO. GAO is a lot like our regionals. In this video, we get to learn Ryan and why we should play Black Yellow Luffy. And we also go over 2 deck lists that he recommends. On the Patreon, we also go over mulligans, the early game, and navigating the mid and late game. And, of course, all of the relative matchups with notes on the side. Before I begin the guide, I do want to give a huge thank you to Enigma for doing this video with me. He's very active in my Discord with Black Yellow Luffy, and if you have any questions, please feel free to join the Discord and start Discording. And a big thank you to all my patrons for making this video possible. Without further ado, let's get into the goop. It's a great day here at Kek Filet's Patreon. I am the Kek Filet, and today I have with me Ryan, aka It's Enigma from Twitter. How are you doing today?
Hello, doing good.
Doing good. I want to introduce you a little bit before I actually jump into what we're doing today, which is a Black Yellow Luffy guide, and it's actually for OP07 and OP08. Where he's located right now is OP08. We're still waiting for OP07 for about 2 or so weeks. But Ryan, with that, where are you from?
Yep. So I'm actually from Malaysia. So the lists that I have are from. So if you're not familiar with the Southeast Asian tournament circuit, instead of regionals, treasure cups, and nationals, we have flagships as well as GAOs and championship qualifiers to worlds.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. Yeah, and so I guess to give people in the West an idea of what that kind of is, their flagships are just kind of. I mean, how big is a flagship? Is it just like a big local?
Yep, it's like a 32 to 64 person event. And it's all Swiss best of 1. And then there's top 8 prizing and first place prizing.
Mm-hmm. Is there ever a top cut in flagships, or is it just like a quick get in, get out on like a Saturday or something?
No, it's just 5 rounds of Swiss. If you win, you take home a flagship Reju. If you get top 8, you take a Cavendish, and that's it.
Oh, okay, got it. And then the GEOs, and then you said it's like an SAO, like I guess that's Singapore, right? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yep. So there was a Singaporean GAO, the Singapore Grand Asia Open, that happened just 2 weeks ago. So it was about a 500 person event. I placed 3rd in that event, and if you're in the top 2, you get the invite to the Asia finals, where if you win there, you get your Worlds invite.
Okay, got it. So that's really tough, by the way. You have to get top 2 in order to get an invite to another tournament. We have to get top 2. Is that right? That's the only way. How many people are usually in this Asia Open? Like, or I guess it's not an open, right? To qualify to go to Worlds. How big is that tournament generally?
Yeah. So the Grand Asia Open this year, at least, we've had 2 of them already. On average, they bring in about 500 people. And then the other CS qualifier the most recent one brought 600 people.
Is it capped at that many, or are they allowing up to like 1,000 people, or is it always capped at 500?
I think it's capped. Yeah, capped at about 500-600.
500-600. Okay, I didn't know that. I guess one thing to clarify: if you were to try to get to Worlds, right, That's your road. So you have to get top 2 at like a regional, like basically what we'd have to do a regional level, right? And there's a top cut, right? So you have to get top 2, and then from there you have to go to another tournament, and then get another top 2. That second tournament, how big are those ones?
So the second tournament
Yeah.
would be just everybody from the GAO
Uh-huh.
or from a CS qualifier that has gotten their invite. So
Yeah.
I think it's about 16, 20 people.
It's so small. That's
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
like
It's
going to
like
Worlds is only
it's
16
the
people.
invite for everyone who got an invite. Yeah.
That's so
But
tiny.
I think they're expanding it this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, this year I think they're planning on making it bigger
Yeah.
because if you are, I think in Malaysia's next CS qualifier,
Mhm.
if you're in the top 20, you get to go to
Yeah.
Asia finals. So they're making it bigger this year, I
Yeah.
think.
You know, this sounds like a really good idea for a podcast. A lot of people don't know anything about like how it works over where you're at, and that has a lot of interesting qualifications, I guess. Before I actually jump into the deck list, I just want to talk about one thing that's interesting. I thought was actually um how is getting into the regionals, like how is signing up for the regionals? Is it first come first serve? Is it on the app and it's like a lottery system? Is it really hard to sign up for these tournaments?
So it's at the moment it's kind of depending on the official distributor in the country where you're at.
Uh-huh.
Grand Asia Open, you have to sign up through the Bandai TCG app, which I
Uh-huh.
think the West is using as well for your events.
No, we're
But
not.
some of the, oh, you're not?
Yeah, I'll tell you how ours works in a minute. Yeah, but we're not using that. Like,
Okay, great, great. Yeah. So,
yeah.
but the CS qualifiers are open to local tournament organizers, I
Okay.
believe. So, yeah. So some of them will use like Google Forms for sign up. Some
Oh,
are
okay.
lottery, some are first come first serve, some are on a ticket basis.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of things where they'll give preferential to people they know or locals, but that's like not uncommon, you know. As far as most games go, it's probably like a standard. But and how it works here in the West is they sign up not through the Bondi app because that thing crashes. They did do one sign up one time and it was terrible. But you sign up through a few different websites that they have. Um, Basically they use a third party system called Best Coast Pairings or RK9. RK9 is used by a lot by Pokemon, and
Okay.
and also something called Tixar. People use Tixar to buy things like concert tickets, right? And so they use these platforms a lot for all these tournaments. It's a little bit easier to sign up compared to Bondi, where if a tournament comes out, it crashes. Last year, because you go to nationals for your nationals, they decided that they wanted to actually do an open invite for nationals because they wanted to have a biggest tournament as possible to show the Bandai executives that the game is popular. Okay. And then what happened was is that, everyone and their mother tried to sign up for nationals, and it was capped at 2,500 people, and people were it was they couldn't get in for like an hour, and then after an hour some people got in.
Okay.
Like it's very very bad. And then when you actually got there were like 600 open spots that they never filled up, because even though there's people there that want to play, but because the app is so janky, right, they didn't want to deal with it. So using the Bondi app, I'll leave that to you guys over there in the East. We do have to submit our deck
Yeah,
lists.
we don't really want to use it either,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, we do want to submit our deck lists through the app. Actually, they are starting to have us do that, but generally it's a little better here. But honestly, people want it. People have higher expectations here in the West for tournament organization. But it's also it's been good and bad. So I'm sure we have many horror stories we can trade with each other at some point. But
yeah.
with that, let's just jump into the actual deck list. Black Yellow Luffy, and this is kind of going over OP07 and OP08. I kind of first just wanted to go over why should we be considered or be playing Black Yellow Luffy?
Okay. So in order to understand the OP7 meta, I think the biggest change from 6 was just that Saka's gone. So like Saka's gone, and with Saka gone, there's two big changes that happened, at least in the East when OP7 happened. One is RP Law came back because they don't have to worry about Hound Blaze Lucci anymore. And the other thing is with Saka gone, Black Yellow Luffy also doesn't have to worry about Hound Blaze. So in OP6, you could play Black Yellow Luffy. It definitely was a good deck. You have a good matchup into Enel, you have a great matchup into Black. But the problem is whenever you go 9k base and you get hit with Great Eruption, Hound Blaze on your Sabo, then their Mora will swing you for like 19k and then you just lose the game. So it's like impossible. But with Saka gone, you can finally play Black Yellow Luffy. And besides the buff to Black Yellow Luffy, if you look at the 07 meta, I'm not sure how the West meta will develop, but if it follows the East, what basically happened is that black decks like Moria and Lucci became very popular simply because they were 5 life leaders and they're the next best removal deck. These decks also got buffed by 9 cost Stussy in OP07, where the effect is basically it's a 9 cost on play, and on play you can KO anything on your field to KO anything on your opponent's field.
Yeah.
So So Black got really strong in OP7, and on top of Black getting strong, decks like RP Law came back. And then you also kind of have like your rogue decks like Bonnie and Enel. But for the most part, Bonnie and Enel also ended up being checked by Black decks. So what you had was just about 40% of the meta share was just either Moria or Lucci. So when 40% of the meta share is a Black deck, the answer is pretty simple. Just bring a deck that can loop Sabo every turn. And so that's why we're playing Black Yellow Luffy. Right? It has great matchup into Black. So much so that Ishos were being ran in every single Black deck just for this matchup in OP7. It has a pretty good matchup into Enel too, simply because once you go 9k base, there's only 2 cards in an Enel deck that can touch you. And against RP Law back in 07, it had a pretty 50-50 matchup as well. Because if you go 9k base and the RP Law has like 6 Dawn, chances are they're just playing a blocker and passing turn, and you've just gotten a free turn.
Yeah. I do want to say one big aspect that went from EB to OP07 that does fix the matchup quite a bit is obviously Rocket Luffy. Because they're, in my experience, Red Purple Law has an advantage over Black Yellow Luffy right now until we get Rocket Luffy, because this deals with so many issues that RP Law presents, which is usually what's that card called? Shariah, right? And Bonk play.
It's like a Bonk play and a Shariah. The game is like really tough.
Well, this removes all those issues. So, So yeah, okay, cool. So a lot of the meta you're saying is, aimed more toward that you're playing Sabo every turn, right? So you can defeat the black decks, and it has at least a decent matchup into Red Purple Law, which I would say, if you're facing 70% of the field with an above average win rate, it's probably a good deck. And so okay, so that's kind of why we should play it, I guess. Is there ever like a concern where like you're facing opponents that just don't know exactly how to play into Black Yellow Luffy? Do you think there's ever a thing where it's just less knowledge of your opponent, like your opponent doesn't know what to do, or do you think it's actually just a difficulty with matchups your opponent has against Black Yellow Luffy?
Yeah, so matchup spread aside, when I first started playing Black Yellow Luffy, I thought this deck was like the perfect example of what it means to have like a skill check deck. Like the power ceiling of this deck is kind of capped at a certain point, and how well the deck performs is based on how well your opponent knows how the matchup goes. Because very early on in 07, when this deck was starting to get popular, people initially thought that, oh, I can just beat down the Luffy early on, and he'll have to start his engine on like 7 or 8 Dawn, and then he'll have to drop cards early, and I can get advantage like that. That's actually like not the right way to play. There's only one deck that can do that, and that's RP Law, and that's only because they can threaten lethal on turn 3. But if you're not RP Law, 9 times out of 10, what you want to do instead is you just want to build a big board and then threaten lethal on the turn that everything swings. And then it's back to the Black Yellow Luffy player to start engine and become 9k right before the lethal turn, or else they're just going to lose too many cards. So in the early days of 07, it definitely felt like if you played against someone who didn't know what they were doing, you just had an advantage playing Black Yellow Luffy. But people caught on very quickly, and I think that will most likely be the case over there as well. Once this deck gets popular, people learn to play the matchup. People will start starving you. They just will not touch you at all, and it's then up to you to start your engine, avoid the lethal turn. So on certain matchups, that can be very easy. But on certain matchups, for example, like against Enel, where they have access to Katakuri, or if you're playing Bonnie and they have access to 9-cost Zoro and 7-cost Hody Jones, it can get a bit weird at times starting your engine. But that's also why we have certain cards in the deck for these specific matchups.
Yeah, we'll actually just jump into the deck list in general. So with that and the deck list, let's go over those specific cards. We'll go over the stock base later, but I think people want to ask mostly about cards that you were saying that were more interesting for these matchups. What card did you want to go over first?
Yep. We can talk about the Kuzan first.
Okay.
So going back to 07 meta and matchups once again, into RP Law and Lucci, you're kind of okay. RP Law is like a 50-50. Going into a black deck like Lucci and Moria, you're fine because you just have an inherent advantage. But when you play against rogue decks like Enel and Bonnie earlier, like we mentioned, when they have access to Katakuri, or when they have Hody Jones that will rest your 5-cost Sabo and clear your board before they swing you for lethal. Against those decks, where they will play slower simply because there's no advantage to them hitting you early, and so they'll starve you. 10-cost Kuzan is just such a great drop. Because once you drop 10-cost Kuzan, it puts 9-cost Yamatos into KO range with 10-cost Kuzan. And very importantly, against the body matchup, which is the worst matchup for Black Yellow Luffy, you can KO 9-cost Zoro. If you don't play Kuzan or Ice Age, your deck will instantly die to Bonnie, because once they drop a 9-cost Zoro, they're just going to swing you for 15k 3 times, and you're just going to lose the game. So you need something to stop that, and that's where we have 10-cost Kuzan.
Got it. Yeah, I guess I wanted to go over one option. A lot of people have actually looked at Ice Age as well. Have you tested a bit more Ice Age? Like, I know some people prefer Ice Age over Kuzan, saying it's either you need this or that. I mean, does Kuzan still come up quite often in those rogue matchups?
I think Ice Age is a very flexible card against Bonnie specifically. I think Ice Age is better than Kuzan, simply because it offers more flexibility. The problem with Kuzan for Bonnie is you basically need to drop Kuzan right after they drop Zoro, which means you need to drop Rocket Luffy on the turn before they drop 9-cost Zoro in anticipation. Right? But they can easily play around that. If they're aware of it, they can Hody Jones and they can rest the Luffy, swing at the Luffy, and you have to guard the Luffy or you'll just lose the game. So instead of playing Kuzan, you can play Ice Age and it's more flexible. But the benefit of Kuzan is if the Kuzan sticks on the board, there's almost zero chance that you're losing the game. Like against Enel, you drop a Kuzan and you'll basically KO a big unit every single turn while developing Moria late game. The beauty of Kuzan is just that for every turn after you play Kuzan, you can continue doing your Moria turn. But you cannot Ice Age the Zoro back to back, because if you're going 9k base on your 10 Dawn turn without using Moria and manually going with your kits, you're dropping like 3 or 4 cards in your hand, and it feels really, really bad.
Okay. Got it. I guess it's a weird thing. I never is it ever like scary? Is it even against like a Bonnie? Are they ever like attacking you a little bit to kind of threaten you so you can't play a 10 drop Kuzan. So you'll go to your 10 drop turn at like, maybe 2. If you have a Kuzan, you have to actually guard your life a little bit to stay like a 2 life. So on the turn you play it, you're safe.
You definitely do. So we can talk more about this in how you play into Bonnie later on when we cover matchups. But yeah, if you're running the Kuzan build, you definitely want to be a little more careful with when to guard against Bonnie. But at the same time, if Bonnie is swinging you early, you're getting to see a lot of cards, and it's not a bad trade.
Yeah. Another card I actually wanted to go over that we haven't used in the West yet, but now that OP07's out and there's a lot of red purple law, probably will be coming through is actually Thunderbolt. What are your thoughts on Thunderbolt in general in this deck?
Yeah, I love this card. Card is amazing. I'll tell you specifically why we play this card. We play this card for the 7 and 8 Dawn turn specifically. So initially, I was running 5-cost Sabo because 5-cost Sabo KOs a kid or in the mirror. If they drop their Luffy, the 8k base Luffy to start their engine earlier, if you drop a Sabo, you can KO the Luffy and you get tempo. But the reason why I decided to swap Sabo out for Raite or Thunderbolt is because on your 7 Dawn turn, if you're against RP Law, what you can do is you can just Raite for 2 Dawn, Leader ability for 2 Dawn, and then your other 2 Dawn can just like bring out Kid to transform. And once you go 7k base, you don't really have to worry about the swing back from RP Law next turn. And if you're on 8 Dawn, you can do the same thing, but you can go 9k base. In the mirror, the 7 Dawn turn is also extremely important because if you go first and you drop a 5-drop and then they drop their 5-drop, you can then Raite whatever they dropped and then play a Sabo after that. So now you have board tempo and you just cleared their 8k Luffy.
Got it. Interesting. Okay, yeah. So it's pretty needed for both the mirror and also RP Law, right? I guess you can probably use it for any matchup where you need to like on your 7 or 8 Dawn turn, right? So card that hasn't been used here, but now it's going to be used quite a bit. I've even seen some builds already running like 3 or 4 of these, right? Would you ever consider running more than 2?
Yeah, I'm actually considering it right now. I'm running 3. I don't think I'll run 4. 4 sounds kind of bricky, but yeah, I'm definitely running 3. It kind of sucks because I remember for the longest time I was the only one playing Raite in flagships, and then people were just calling me blasphemous for my deck list. They were like, "What's this deck list with 2 Raite, like 1 Kid Ace?" And then now I walk up to a flagship and people are like killing my Luffy with Raite, and it was like disaster. But yeah,
they learned from you, man. They learned from you. It is definitely going to be a Sabo fight, and I don't know you think about it, right? So this definitely negates that. And I guess the other main thing is that in the West, and obviously in EB, Ace is a really big card because you have to kind of beat Sakazuki pretty fast if you want to have a good chance. You have to be an aggressive deck. But now that we're running less Ace, I know in your 08 build you basically don't run Ace at all, right? What are your thoughts just running less Ace? You just feel like it? Why even? I mean, should you even be running 3? These 3 in 07? Like, is this even an option just to get rid of for better cards?
Yeah, I've cut them out completely in 08. I might play 2, 1 child and 1 adult, and we can talk about like the math behind the ratios after this. But I think in 07, 07's kind of a slower meta. Every black deck in the game wins by just pushing out more Morias and just beating you to death with 9k base. Bonnie wins by just pushing out Zoro. Inel wins by just pushing out big guys and beating you to death. So in a slower meta, you don't really need 7 cost Ace. And the other thing is just I find that so the thing about Black Yellow Luffy is when your leader is 9k base, you don't really want to rest a character with a power lower than 9k because you don't really you don't want to have to like defend that. So when Moria swings your Ace, you kind of just have to give the Ace up. So I've never felt a need to run Ace in my Black Yellow Luffy deck. And it's never really done that much for me.
Yeah, I mean, ever since this Luffy comes out, right? It's better just to use this Luffy rather than this. And quite often, if anyone's ever played a lot of Black Yellow Luffy, you will understand that when you play Gecko Moria back to back, the second Gecko Moria, you're almost calling over cards. You're almost sometimes calling over like a Sabo because you don't have a Sabo in your trash. And if they don't actually attack your ace, you actually have to like call over your ace half the time. So the fact that we're using Luffy instead and clearing our own board with it and just drawing cards is better than just running ace. So maybe it's just kind of explained to some people. And we're going to go over also your OP08 deck because it still runs OP07 cards a little bit, right? And going over the differences as well. With this, and I'm showing the sauce. I can blink over the sauce in post editing, right? With this, what are your thoughts on this change difference? I mean, you don't have any OP08 cards in the deck. Like, how did you come to this deck, removing ace and just putting in, I guess, this additional 4 cost in the deck?
Yeah. So initially, I actually thought that Black Yellow Luffy was just an unplayable deck in 08. Your matchups into Black are great, but the problem is just that the matchup into RP Law is really, really tough. Yeah. The reason why it's really, really tough is because before this, if you went 9k base, and the RP Law was just like chugging out bodies in the early and mid game, after you go 9k base, they're kind of like at 6 Dawn. And at 6 Dawn, the most they can do is leader 11k swing, or if they like play a killer kit and they swing you for like 10k. That's just 2 cards in hand and you don't care. But in OP08, they get Black Maria. And so what happens is usually the turn right before you start engine, they'll play Black Maria, go to like 8 Dawn. And then after you become 9k base, there'll be 10 Dawn. So if you go 9k base with a Sabo, all they do is they Gordon the Sabo, bottom deck it, and then they swing you for like 16k with a killer kit, which is like game over. So initially, I thought this deck was kind of dead. But I think in 08, at least right now, it's just a meta call. About 60 to 70% of the field is RP Law Lucci. So this deck instantly checks Lucci, right? Instantly checks any black deck. But against RP Law, what I was really looking for the longest time was I just need something to make the early game more playable. And that's where Borsalino comes in. So in 07, we ran Ivankov. We run Ivankov because on our Moria turn, we want to Moria bring back Ivankov's standing and bring a kid rested. And then we will transform the kid. So that gives us 2 bodies, a 7k base leader, and 1 life. So we don't have to worry about Gordon bot decking a Sabo and swinging us. But then in 08, I realized, okay, Ivankov is kind of just a really bad card. If I use it to start engine, I'm dropping like 4 cards. I'm going neck 4. That sounds terrible. Let's just play Borsalino, right? And some people in the East are already playing 4-cost Kuzan instead. So you just play 4-cost Kuzan. Yep. And then if Kuzan gets Gordon bot deck, you're like, oh, well, I drew a card off my Kuzan. I don't really care. But the reason why I play 4-cost Borsalino as well is because if you're playing against Lucci, the only way that you lose is if you miss out a Sabo cycle. So what I mean by that is, if you're going first, you essentially have 3 turns before your 10 Dawn Moria turn. So that's your 5 Dawn turn, your 7 Dawn turn, and your 9 Dawn turn. If you miss a Sabo on any of these turns, your board's just getting wiped, right? So Borsalino is just an additional card that you don't have to worry about missing a Sabo cycle.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so it's a little more flexible. I guess I did want to go over Kuzan real quick as an option, because I have been seeing people playing even 4 of these, but honestly, even in the West, they're kind of frustrated. I have a person I work with really closely, Eric, and he's been playing a lot of this in his OP07 deck, and honestly finding it frustrating. If you find anything in this in testing, have you tested this card out and just find that it wasn't worth it for the field?
I think in 07, I don't think this card is worth running in 07 because -4 costs doesn't put anything in 9k base range to
Yeah.
KO range. So all of the big characters that are 9k attack power are not 8 costs. So this doesn't put anything in range.
Yeah.
And Luffy needs you to be 2 life. So if you swing with a Kuzan, like nothing happens. You know, like they're just gonna starve you. You'll never be able to use Rocket Luffy's effect. And it's important to note that for anyone seeing these OP08 lists, yes, we run Kuzan because okay, so we run Kuzan mainly because of the RP Law matchup. Almost everything that we've added in OP08 is just to make the RP Law matchup more playable. We play Kuzan because on your Moria turn, when you bring back 1 kit and 1 4 cost, if you bring back the Kuzan and make your leader 7k base, and you draw a card, it's essentially the same thing as Borsalino, but instead of blocking with your blocker, you block with the 1 card you draw from hand, and you still have the Kuzan on board. So only after you start your engine does a Kuzan swing threaten KOing like a 5 cost kid or a 5 cost queen. But the main reason why we play Kuzan is just on our 4-dawn turn, it just replaces itself. Like that's it. We just need something to generate value while putting something on the board, which is the same reason why we play Borsalino. Because everything that we put on the board is dying to a Lucci, is dying to a Gordon. It will be gone. So we at least trade a card.
Yeah. Plus, it's a 1k counter, so it's not actually dead in your hand like Kuzan is. So, which is very relevant as we might know. Okay, great. Well, I think we went over the generalist thing of the deck list. Is there anything you want to talk about with the deck list? Maybe at all before we jump into our next segment, which is the Mulligan.
Yeah, I think we can talk about Mulligan.
Sure.
And then I think as we talk about Mulligan and matchups, it'll be more clear why certain cards in the deck list exist as they are.
Yeah. With that, with the Mulligan, what should we be looking to aim for with the first fight?